listen very, very carefully.
Something big is going down.
Impressive.
This is treasure.
Hit me.
I am inspired.
I don't see why I should have to compromise.
To the break of dawn, baby.
That's what I'm talking about.
Now tell me that doesn't work for you.
I'd see that movie.
I'd buy the goddamn DVD. And, you know, if the Academy didn't send them to me for free.
All right, that was like a proper trailer. I'm hyped up. Woo! Dang, that was fun. Everybody doing all right? Okay, everybody? Yeah? Woo! Yeah? A little wave, a little clap. Love to see it. I'm Zack Seward. I'm going to be talking about movies with two guys. We got Sam, we got Chuck. We're going to talk about tokenizing cultural assets. But first, let's just geek out about film for a minute. So, Sam, that was like the work of your father, right? He produced a number of movies. We're talking about Wall Street, we're talking about American Psycho, Judge Dredd was in there, you name it. Kind of like, again, I think, stepping back, kind of the edgy movies that you don't really see in today's Hollywood, right? Not a Marvel pick among those that we just saw, right? So just talk to me about, like, you know, your father's legacy. Which of those films really resonated with you, and what you're trying to do with this new project to bring more of those creations to life?
Well, first of all, thanks for being here. Thanks to everyone for taking an interest in what we're trying to build at Pressman Film in this new chapter. I think my father, Ed, was really in Hollywood at the front of the frontier of making films independently. And part of what I think is so brilliant about his career is anticipating the trends and being able to evolve with the new forms of independent financing decade over decade. And you know, you look at a movie like Judge Dredd or like Conan the Barbarian, and that's like 20 years before the Marvel takeover of the industry. He understood that IP is the core of the industry, that in essence, when you can own a book or own a graphic novel, you can build on it and retain the ownership so that over the time of its life, you just continue to generate revenue. So, you know, when he purchased the book for American Psycho, I remember I was like a teenager and not allowed to see the film. But once it, you know, is everyone familiar with the film American Psycho? A show of hands.
It's the one with Patrick Bateman and the chainsaw, all that good stuff. That's a classic.
You know, so as we think about re-envisioning that film with our partner Lionsgate, we're still a part of it because we own that. You know, owning IP is tantamount to owning real estate. You can develop it over and over and over again.
Is there just, like, on a personal level, like a favorite film? Is American Psycho the forbidden fruit that you now love all the more, or is there other ones that stand out?
God, I love so many of his films. There's a movie called Phantom of the Paradise, which is 50 years old today. Daft Punk, the band, met in the movie theater, and named their record label after it. Grateful Dead. Guillermo del Toro and Edgar Wright counted as their favorite films, and whenever I watch it, I just think how much fun it must have been making the movie.
Yeah, it's cool to see just the hype reel, honestly. Chuck, sorry, I cut you off.
No, I'm always blown away by these little clips. Most, companies, tech companies especially, they'll show something like that and they have absolutely no right to the IP. They weren't producers of the actual content that's being used in their hype film or their hype, video. But you guys had IP or production in every single thing that we just saw in that 2-minute video, correct?
Yeah, each one of those are movies our company made.
And you're hoping, to get a little bit of that, success in this new 6 or 7 film slate that you're doing with Republic, right? And do you have any movies that you've identified yet, or that comes later?
Yeah, I think for background, we launched a development slate. Development is acquiring IP, writing the script, attaching the director, putting together everything. Again, going back to the analogy of real estate, it's like buying the land, hiring the architect, and building the blueprint of what you're going to build. It launched just over a month ago, and it's raised $1.5 million thus far, which was our target goal. With $1.5 million, we'll produce the scripts of 6 movies by our model, 3 of which would come from our library, the catalog of films that we control the IP of, and 3 of which would be newly identified. We have a couple different books, and there's actually a video game company we're thinking about working with. When you look at the success of Gunzilla, which is a game built on Avalanche, they just made a 6-picture deal with Sony to adapt that into films, right? That's building IP and being able to control it.
Yeah, so stepping back, right? So this is the crowdfunding, right? That you guys are doing to extend sort of
crowd investing.
Sorry. Is that passe? Crowdfunding, is that over?
Passes. Yeah, crowd's a rough word, but yeah.
All right, a good crowd.
Only because they're actually getting to make money, right? They're investing and deriving revenue. It's like one of the first security tokens by a real legitimate
on-chain
film.
revenue sharing, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
We'll get to the blockchain part. Don't you worry. We got plenty of time here. For people who are not in the industry, can you paint a picture of sort of traditional movie investors? If you didn't go this route with Republic, who would be financing stuff like this, and how does that persona differ from the folks that you have something like 208 investors now, according to your page. How would the traditional financiers of these films be different than what you're working with now?
Well, you're looking at investors that are able to put 6-figure checks in, right? You don't often see a syndicate of people coming together to put development or production financing together. So, we're talking about ultra high net worth individuals or, a bank or an institution that wants to form a long-term partnership with a slate. And with this raise with Republic, we're allowing $200 as the base investment. So you have just a base of film fans that suddenly become your advocates and really evangelize the release of the film. So in our minds, it's about engaging that community. It's about building a global audience that's going to support the films as they roll out into the world.
Chuck, I'll put this to you first, and then Sam, I want your take as well. So, say I put $200 in, and I become a backer of Pressman Films and their new slate of projects, right? Mechanically, what happens? How does it work following that? Just walk me through mechanically so we really know what we're talking about.
Sure.
And then we'll get to some of these bigger ideas around asset tokenization.
So you are an actual, this is a security. You're buying that on the Republic marketplace. Those securities represent a revenue share between that investment contract and Pressman Film. They'll go out and they'll use the capital to help produce those films. Once the films hit theaters, revenue is created, and then the individual investors get their pro rata portion shared with them over time. The interesting part about it is, and I think we'll probably go to it more later, is that it is on chain. It is on Avalanche. That makes it a lot more efficient and feasible when individuals put in, say, $50. Because if we're using traditional rails to make payment to people from a regular revenue share, it's not going to be feasible or efficient at a $50 investment. So we have to send the person whatever, maybe $20 as a first revenue share distribution, or $15 or $8.50 for the $50 investment. It's really important that it is on chain. It also gives those individuals a chance to connect with the Pressman Film company directly, because Sam and his team will be utilizing will actually build in features and utility perks for those individual security owners to engage back with their company. It can go as far as maybe like giving opinions on should the second film be produced or the third film be produced, or it could go basically whatever you can dream of can be codified, built into the utility of that security, and becomes a very powerful marketing source for the film, the film company and even the film industry.
So this may be like too much of a distillation. So on your side, it's like efficiency, right? There's efficiency benefits. Yeah. On your side, it's sort of engagement and bringing in a new crew of folks to help you build these things and build excitement around these things. Are there any other benefits that you saw to doing this on chain versus a traditional route? Well,
the transparency, right? The Hollywood has been plagued with what we term Hollywood accounting. So, Star Wars: A New Hope. That's one of the most successful films of all time, and yet there was a re-edit that famously constructed a financial kind of piracy, and the original rights holders and producers of the first New Hope, when the film was digitized, they famously changed it so that Han Solo didn't shoot first. Suddenly the revenue was not directed to the original producers, right? So to have a contract that's a smart contract that clearly delineates how money is coming back once it comes in is something that in the larger scope, in the future of what Hollywood can be, the more that production finance is brought on chain, I think we can actually see a new model, and one that when you combine it with the community aspect can be a complete game changer.
Got it. So, scrolling through Republic, it seems as though film and entertainment projects are sort of this emerging vertical. You have like Snoop Dogg's son doing something. I saw there was
no, definitely. Cultural assets are super important to Republic.
How new is the film push, and like what does that mean? Like tactically, what does that mean? You're just in Hollywood, like looking for deals, or how does that work?
We've had other films raised with us in the past, and other production houses, including Skybound, who's the creator of The Walking Dead. That did quite well, raised about $20 million, but it was still under the standard what could also be affected by Hollywood accounting ways. Like Sam just said, having it on chain and having that clear delineation, having true transparency is wildly important. And the other reality too, not just at Republic, but across the whole industry, is a lot of these things weren't possible. I would have loved to have done it for Skybound, but it just wasn't possible at the time due to some technology limitations and especially with regulatory limitations. Republic does always take the regulated, compliant, legal approach first, so it just wasn't possible then. But now that we can, we've actually spent so much time building up these legal and technology rails to allow something like this to happen. And Sam, and thank you for being it, but like you really are the first to do it at Republic, and we think it's going to be of many more. And I think
let's fucking go.
Yeah, exactly. No, like 200 people. I'm a little bit embarrassed by that. I think it should be in the thousands. Everyone knows Pressman Films. They don't know Pressman Film. So getting you out there more, getting people to understand that like what you're actually doing with that money and doing with that capital to build movies is super important, and we got to get that into the thousands. So you have like true support in that community, but it'll be bigger. I think it'll be like a double or a tripler next time, like numbers wise. Because you're going to get money back into people's wallets in a decent amount of time, right? It's not like making a private equity investment. You have to wait 7, 10 years, 12 years, or even more sometimes. Revenue share is super important too. I think growing a bunch of industries, but especially in blockchain, the way that we're doing it.
Yeah, definitely put a pin in the regulation stuff. We'll get back to that later. Did want to talk about some of the other sort of cultural assets that you guys are working with, and sort of again like it makes sense with movies. I see like the exit path is soon, pretty soon, like. As you mentioned, right? This film goes out, makes money, that's distributed to investors in a clear and transparent way. That's great. But for like sports teams and like other things like that, seems like maybe the exit path is like a little squishier. Like, how are you approaching that with investors?
Well, I'll start with music. Music's very much like film. So we have, dude, I'm just Chuck. I'm not that big a guy, but I have guys like Jason Derulo sending me text messages because he wants to bring his next 2 songs to Republic's platform to sell to his fans.
It's a nice flex.
That's me cool. No, it's awesome.
That's
but
cool.
That will actually get money into people's pockets very quickly. He knows what songs they're going to be. He knows where they're going to be released. He knows how many people listen to his songs right out of the gate. We're doing the math. We see how much can actually be paid back to investors. And then you can start to break it down to like the individual level. If someone puts in $100, they're probably going to get back like $17.50 the first time he makes a distribution. So you start getting money back into people's wallets, and that can all be done on chain. With sports, you know, I just started to tap in. I've worn a lot of different hats at Republic, but I just started to tap into that world about 6 months ago. Every team is for sale. It doesn't matter. You name your team, they're for sale. Meaning that there will be exits on the horizon. They're not going to be paying out distributions. That's like kind of a no-no in that world. Yeah, sometimes bonuses are paid out and whatnot, but they're not going to be paying out distributions to shareholders, unfortunately.
Well, sports teams don't really make money. They just accrue value.
Well,
the longer
some
you
industry,
hold
yeah.
them, right?
I'm happily surprised by how many, especially like European football clubs, actually make profit. As poorly as a lot of those clubs are managed, but they actually are making profit. They're not going to distribute that back to you. So yeah, you are waiting, but I think in sports, you know, you're watching. It's not like you go to see that movie every week. In sports, you're watching that team play every week. Maybe you're going to the stadium. You own like shirts and you own hats and you own even other like gear that's related to the team. So there is a different type of connectivity to sports, which I think keeps people enthralled and like engaged with the investment, regardless if it takes 3, 5, 7, or 10 years. They also have a lot more opportunity through the utility features to really engage their fan base, and that's something I'm talking about at 410. At 440. Across the way.
Hey, no talk shilling on this stage, guy. So let's talk about like, you know, the pitch to these 208 people, right? Has it been easy to sell them on this vision? It seems like rather simple. I don't know, just looking at the site. It's not super like scary crypto stuff. Are people asking about sort of the back end mechanics, or is it fairly straightforward in terms of like, here's the vision, support it, here's the cool stuff you get? What's that process been like for you?
Well, I think, you asked the question of what films are going to be in the slate, and that question has been returned to a lot, and I think that ambiguity is one of the things we're working against, because of the nature of film, we've kept that kind of our trade secret. And the blockchain component to it, there have been a lot of projects speaking about the democratization of culture, and for the most part, they haven't been able to break through to the mainstream. So I think what our company brings into the space, and this is something I've been talking about for a couple, 3 years. Mark Iserlis, who came into Republic to run the film vertical, someone that I've been talking about creating a DAO with for years. Another friend of mine was able to finance a film through NFTs. The problem is that those NFTs had no revenue component to how they functioned. And the fact that Republic suddenly had this mechanism of actually having a securitized commodity that you could participate in is when I said, all right, let's really do this. And I think there is such a value to how a film lives, right? Films are created by a community and then are consumed by a community. So if there's a mechanism to allow the cast and crew to also participate in the token of that film or of that slate, you could see movies receive the outsized return of like 100x, right? The token itself, the cultural value of a movie that lasts for years, right? When you make a great film, American Psycho is 30 years old, and yet when you look online, the memes of that movie just keep proliferating. When you think about Gordon Gekko as a character, he's like a literary figure. He'll live, beyond when Michael Douglas passes into the other side. And when you think of all of the ancillary materials that a movie generates, whether that be like digital art, whether that be the opportunity to merch, right? If you allow token holders to have certain immediate licenses that they can then monetize their fandom, you're allowing what is already our attention, right? There are people who are spending hundreds of hours dedicated to the movies they love, and they're not even really there to make money. So if over the coming years the fans can feel like they're a part of the movies they love, I think we'll both see better movies and we'll see the film industry get closer to the fandom that it needs to connect with, right? That younger audience that seems to be so close to the creators in, the social media sphere or on YouTube, they've understood how to connect directly with their audience. And film and Hollywood has kind of lagged behind that. The independent producers, if they adopt this belief in how on-chain financing can work, I think the community aspect is going to be very functional and also financially profitable.
Quick sidebar, because you mentioned the DAO thing. What was your entryway into the world of crypto? How long you've been looking into this stuff? How long you've been experimenting or investing? Like, sounds like maybe you have some experience with crypto before endeavoring on this project.
Well, I went to Stanford and was surrounded by all these tech heads and worked with a director named Abtin Bagheri. We just worked together on a music film that's going to come out later this year, or sorry, next year. And Abtin would sign all of his emails from 2011 "Buy Bitcoin." I wish that I had just listened to him from the jump, but you know, this concept of a decentralized financial order felt like something urgent and really world-changing. And the last sort of cycle and quasi-bubble was frustrating to me because I think the promise of crypto is to provide something that actually is meaningful and changes the financial system, not just creates insanely, I mean, the returns are incredible, so don't hate on that. But to see this new chapter and the way that securitized tokens can function, I think will really inspire the general community to buy in and say, oh, damn, so you can do ticketing, right? It's not just this like little digital NFT, but that NFT is giving you access to a suite of experiences. And, you know, hearing a grandfather in the Brentwood Mart saying, my granddaughter got this NFT thing and gets to go to the Taylor Swift concert. You know, that type of, oh, there's an application and a real world asset that is gonna really excite people who've been kind of scared off by the volatility.
Can I add to the mechanics on this?
Go for it.
This is really important, I think, and I know we're at Republic like building toward this, and I think a lot of you here probably are too in your businesses, but to me, a lot of it's going to come down to the user experience, and if their experience is really not recognizing that they're interacting with blockchain, then it becomes massive. So, because you do have a ton of people in the world who are not like, you know, accustomed or comfortable with, you know, you use those words and they get afraid, they don't want to be part of that investment either. But when the user experience can come down to something as simple as their wallet, their digital wallet. That's basically an account profile. That's where all the activity happens, right? So if you can get that user experience down to a simple way that they don't really think of it as one way or another, then it's a massive win. And I think you have a lot of people who like follow on after that because it's, you know, any good user experience is good for you, and it doesn't matter where it's coming from technology-wise.
All right, cool. Let's go to the doom and gloom section of the conversation. Let me be the regulatory wet blanket guy, because you know there was a lot of sort of entertainment excitement around NFTs last cycle. 21, we saw Stoner Cats. We saw all these experiments. The guy who did Rick and Morty, I'm blanking on his name, did some stuff. There was like suddenly it was the vibe, right? Like NFTs were in Hollywood, and it was going to be world changing, right? And now 3 years later, like Stoner Cats is settling with the SEC. Over an alleged securities violation, right? Sure. Largely because of the utilities that are baked into these assets, right? That you are granting things that are securities yeah. like, right? Yeah. So when you're talking about utility that you're baking into this thing, cool rewards and things that keep investors engaged, does the prospect of SEC crackdown
how do they stay out of the line of fire, basically?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like it's got to be a scary prospect.
First and foremost, it's security. And yeah. You call it a security token or digital equity or digital security. All those names work. The utility that we're all familiar with, they've been around for 10 years. There's a company named Chili's that does a great job with utilities in the sports world. All the NFTs you just mentioned, et cetera. So they do get, like I would say, regulatory coverage because they're actually just they're not naked and exposed just for that. It's under the security. It's part of the security encoded into that security. So yeah, if you do the security right, you play the exemptions right, you have the right licenses to do it, et cetera, the SEC is not going to be looking at those utilities because it's already under a security framework. Yeah, so it's like, common enterprise, right, is like one of the pillars of the Howey test, right? So you're saying if it's under the securities framework and it satisfies, the conditions of the Howey test, which is silly, dates back to the 30s from Orange Grove in Florida, if anyone doesn't know about it. But you're saying if it's properly situated under that umbrella, it's safe. Yeah, I mean, you can think of it as like a rewards program, right? The SEC is not going to go after a rewards program. It's just part of that company's engagement with their customers, right? They can't go after that.
So is this your pitch? Like, do it with us. Don't do some bootleg NFT shit.
I don't go.
Watch out.
I say, yeah, we take that approach, and if that's what you want to do, we'll do it with you. If you don't want to do it that way, then we're probably not going to be able to do it with you unless it's truly a utility and a utility only. Most of the utilities that we do work on, utility tokens, we do put a what I call like a security wrapper legally around it. So if there is a change of like opinion, a regulator, whether they're from Europe or Asia or from whatever America comes and says like, oh, this is a security, then it's a little bit less of, say, a headache to change it into a security, but you'll still have some problems likely.
Yeah, we spent 8 months, going back and forth with Republics.
Created that thing from scratch. That was a massive legal lift, right?
Yeah, because we want to do it above board.
Yeah.
We're a company that's been around for 50 plus years. I'm not here to besmirch my father's legacy. I'm here to build on it. And the bottom line is Republic introduced to me this concept of a securitized token that really changed my mind and said, all right, we can actually do this and we won't, get thrown into jail.
And if you do this, like you repeat what your dad did for the last 50 years in your own way on chain, the amount of like information, data, and I guess connectivity you're going to have with those movies and those individuals who go and watch them and actually financially support them, it's important.
Yeah, I mean, and sorry, just the point that Sony just bought Alamo Drafthouse, a movie theater in the States, purely for that data, purely to be able to know who's coming into their movie theaters. And, at the end of the day, that leveraging of community, we've been primarily promoting to, kind of mainstream film lovers. And we're going to continue to do that and have a really robust rollout with the fact that we've hit 1.5 million makes it a meaningful story. But we're really here at the AVAX conference looking to connect to the crypto community. I'm writing a little piece in CoinDesk that's going to be published next week. And we want to both appeal to the kind of mainstream investor, but underneath it is this blockchain mechanism that is the core of it and the future that we're trying to connect with. So really happy to be here at the summit and want, if people want to share it with their communities, that's what we're here to do, connect the community and make something culturally lasting.
So, like, do you feel like the common refrain in crypto is we need clarity. Like, we need clarity. Do you feel like the clarity is there on the regulatory side, and that a lot of that is overblown, or is there still gray area from the issuer side that you face? And then I'll pop that to the project side after that. There's
certainly a lot more clarity than there were even 2 years ago. Today, I think we understand the rules enough that we can always take it to the outermost limit of what they allow. But we wish there was some further clarity. There are a few things that need to change, both in with the SEC, the FCA, even the ADGM and DFIC. Those type of regulators need to also come around on a few other things before it's like really, really robust. But I don't want to like talk shit about them because they have come around a lot. But we know there are a few things that are missing. Like I'd like to come out like for his SAM security, right? That's debt related, so that's a little easier to actually tokenize before the actual issuance. But for these sports clubs, we can only bring it up as digital equity, and then we have to do it after the primary raise closes, because if we did it beforehand, rules don't they're not permissible in Europe, and we get screwed. And so are the club, so are the fans, so are the investors. So we have to wait, and then we change it afterwards. It's not that big a deal at the end of the day. It'd just be a lot easier and nicer for everyone involved if you could do it beforehand.
So from the project side, same question. Do you feel like you're existing in an environment that has clarity, or is it still kind of murky from where you sit?
I mean, I have a clear understanding of how our company is going to utilize the capital that we're raising, right? We always conceived of it as 6 projects where you're looking at, a range of 100 to 400,000 going into separate projects, and we have, I'd say 4 of them identified already. As we raise more money, we're able to go after higher profile IP, and Harry Potter was acquired for $2 million, right? If we hit 4 million and we have 2 million to go after a huge book, like that paid back well for David Heyman and the company behind that. So, film is most certainly a challenging industry. And that's why I think creating an IP out of scratch and expecting it to connect with a mainstream audience is so challenging. You want to connect yourself to IP. My father was one of the first producers to adapt a video game to movies with the Jean-Claude Van Damme Street Fighter. He was, he made He-Man Masters of the Universe, which was one of the first things to take a Mattel toy and turn it into a film. And I was looking back through his notebooks. My father passed away a year and a half ago, I should say. And diving into his notebooks, he kept these great little notebooks, has been a joy for me. And in the beginning, he would always track all the projects that he was working on. And I found this insane page where he had partnered with Mattel and a writer named Robin Swikard to do a musical of Barbie. And at the same time, he was working with Jonathan Demme, who directed Silence of the Lambs. And they were doing a movie called City of Fire that was the story of Oppenheimer. So in 1991, my father was developing his own Barbenheimer, and I was just like, this guy was just always seeing where the future was going.
This may be a bit far afield, but like, are you thinking about sort of derivatives of the IP that are within the Pressman portfolio? Like, say someone wants to make, Conan the whatever, or like He-Man the whatever, or like Judge Dredd SEC Lawsuit Edition. Is there a way to sort of track that and retain some of the value of those derivative works under the thing that you're doing now?
Yeah, 100%. Like for The Crow, which we just remade, we partnered with an AI company called Hidden Door, and we created this RPG text-based story world that you could explore as a multiplayer exploration. And we've been building a pipeline to take that, journey of story and port that into a graphic novel or comic book. So you'd create a comic book in the style of The Crow from the journey that you and your friends just took. We talked with Sandbox, the metaverse company, about putting, some of the characters that we work with into their world. With The Crow, we did Call of Duty skin, which was really cool, and adapting things to TV. We're looking. We have a new film coming, having its festival premiere in November in Amsterdam, that was written by a large language model based on the German director Werner Herzog's books and scripts. Worth looking up Werner Herzog if the name connects or doesn't connect. He's a fascinating character. So as a company, both with blockchain as well as digital production, we're thinking about how we look towards the future and see IP from a 360 perspective.
Yeah, Chuck, from where you sit, like, what's the frontier here? Like, we're doing some of the low-hanging fruit, I guess, but when it relates to further out on the curve, further down into these niche communities, or just things that most of us aren't thinking about, what does sort of the next wave of asset tokenization in the cultural realm will look like?
So I think it'll be American-based sports, and I say that because everyone, I talk about sports, I keep on really referencing European football and even South American soccer, so soccer. And by what I mean by American sports is those leagues don't allow this to happen currently. It's not the SEC or any other regulator, it's just those leagues. I think, and yeah, granted, MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, et cetera, have started to allow private equity firms to invest in those clubs. It's not very much. It's also super restrictive. It's limited, et cetera, et cetera. They are now starting to talk about allowing fans to come in. I think it'll probably be 1 to 2 years before you start to see that happen. But to put it into perspective, and of course we would do it through on-chain, et cetera. That would be super valuable to doing it that way. But put it in perspective, you have the Green Bay Packers. They're the only publicly owned franchise in American sports. And if the SEC should be looking at anything, it might want to look at those securities because they're really far from it. But they have over 570,000 shareholders for a company and a football team that hasn't really advertised or marketed it for the last 30 years. They've been taking anywhere from $30 to $400 per investment from individuals. but the point is I think you'll end up seeing, you know, 1 million plus in a lot of these, whatever NFL teams, especially NBA teams, multiple millions of people who are actually owners, investors, and more than typically engaged fans coming in the near term.
Is there like liquidity for like Green Bay Packers shares?
No,
Like,
no.
What does that?
You can
like,
go
look
read
like?
about that yourself, but like literally it just says like, hey, thanks for the money. This means nothing to you. There is no exit possibility. You're never getting your money back. Oh, here's a discount code for our merchandise shop on our like online store. That's really what it is.
That seems like one of the clear benefits of putting this stuff on chain, right? Is that you can have these organic marketplaces spring up for assets that you care about.
Yeah.
Especially around sports teams that people are passionate about, movies, as other things that are linked culturally.
And I'll throw in one more that I think will be more prominent in the near term, or hopefully very soon, will be the secondary market for these tokens, these security tokens. So, of course, we have a digital ATS. ATS would be like the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ, but if you have a digital ATS, they're only allowed to take on security tokens. So like Pressman Film, or like Watford Football Club is raising on Republic Now, or every other company that I've talked to for the last 6 or 12 months, they would be doing security tokens, and then we will be exchange listing those on the digital ATS, and then individuals can sell them, or they can come and buy them. We think a lot of people want to buy them because of the utility features. So, if Sam, dreams up something really cool and we can codify that into the actual security, or this team does something, above and beyond just like a standard, like here's your merchandise discount code, it can get pretty exciting and get a lot of people who go onto that secondary and actively, trading or buying. Or what if, in order to be a season ticket holder, you had to be an equity owner in the club? Well, you're going to miss a primary raise because maybe you're not going to be a season ticket holder for 5 years, but then you'll be able to buy them online on a secondary. There's a lot of reasons why people should be owning them, and also keeping it open for people to own them is super important.
Are you thinking about that stuff? Are you thinking about sort of secondary market things, ways to incentivize people to participate in this, or is that still not part of the vision?
I think it's one of the appeals of where this goes downstream. I think it's part of why a slate is so much more compelling than a single picture, because a single film has just such obvious touch points and milestones. But when you have a slate, you have a slate being a number of films, the life cycle of each film stacks. And if you think about having a piece of A24, which now is valuated in the billions, if that could be a fan-owned in part studio, the valuation of that would be shared and owned by the fans for their early belief, and that could be tradable. And you get into that having these tokens enables you to have access to IRL experiences like visiting set or being on the red carpet. And at the end of the day, it's all about we'll have a community channel where everyone can speak and say their part on what films they like or what actors they like for a film. And with that's data for us to inform our decisions. And really, by being a token holder, you have access to that. So that's where that secondary market, if this slate makes films over the next 5 years, and we make some awesome movies, I think being the first to do it, those tokens will have an inherent value in the community and the marketplace. So I'm stoked about where we're going.
Yeah, it's definitely fun to think about the possibilities. I'm excited for you. Sounds exciting. We're going to leave the conversation there, wrap up on time. Thanks you both.
Thank
Chuck,
you.
Sam, let's give these guys a big round of applause. And thanks so much for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.